Hey everybody, welcome back. And it's early October. Deer season has started for most places across the country, upper half of the country anyway. It started here in Michigan for us October 1st, and we were actually able to go out, had a nice cold front, and we had some success. We're going to talk about that at the end of the video. But today we want to talk about this drought that we're battling and how we're trying to keep our food plots going. But before we get into that, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum is all this rain in southeast part of the country, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, all those states. Florida's going through round 2 of hurricanes. Folks, you're in our thoughts and our prayers. It's just sad to see what's going on down there, and we're thinking about you all. Please stay safe best you can and hang in there. It's very unfortunate, but just know that we're thinking of you all down there in the southeast part of the country. So drought. How are we dealing with this? Well, right now we're this late into the season here in Michigan. We've had a couple of frosts. All we were doing right now is trying to keep our food plots what we can. We're trying to keep them alive. So how are we doing that? What are we doing? What did we plant? This is year number 4, but this is as bad as I've seen here. I've lived here, I believe, since 1999. I've lived in this location. And this is as bad as I've seen. Our swimming pond that a lot of you people have seen in our videos when we talk about that food plot behind our house, that's as low as I've ever seen. And we actually are going to talk about that pond and utilizing that pond now to help combat this drought. But I think since the end of July here where I'm at is we've received maybe an inch of rain. We've had a couple of pop-up showers, and we've had, I think now, 6 major thunderstorms miss us by some less than 5 miles. And it's, I don't want to say it's depressing because, it's very frustrating because it's so hard to keep things growing. So we're going to walk you through here in the studio as well as out in the field what we did this year to combat drought. And what we ended up doing was here at the house on our backyard food plot, as well as one of our hunting properties, we ended up we have here in the Midwest, here in Wisconsin, Michigan, we have what's called Menards. Most people around the Midwest know what Menards is. It's kind of like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. It's a big box hardware store. We ended up going and getting a couple of sprinkler pumps, and I'll go through what those are. I'll actually show you what they are, show you the specifications. We got a couple of sprinkler pumps down behind the house. We have power down at the pond. One of our hunting properties, we had to take a generator with us, but now I think what's going to be a better option with a trash pump. And what we ended up doing was watering. We ended up hooking sprinklers up and watering. I tried to do some planting, some rye overseeding, and I just couldn't keep enough water on there, because if I would have watered that same spot for about 6 days in a row or 7 days in a row, it probably would have taken. But I had to keep moving the sprinkler to keep the whole plot alive. Everything was starting to brown. The brassicas on both the plot here at the house as well as our plot up north where we ended up having some success, they were wilting, they were stressed, they were turning colors. So what we ended up doing on our hunting property up north, there was a ditch up there where a berm was dug, and the ditch at the time was 12 feet deep. Now it's probably only 6. It filled in, and it was really low on water. So I got to water for about 7 days before that ditch was getting really low with water. But we ended up watering our brassica plot, 2 different sprinklers, and you could see by day 7, we would start at about 6 o'clock in the morning. And by day 7, you could see the color come back to the brassicas, the stress was gone, and I think we saved that plot. Now, the plot is about 3/4 of an acre of brassica. We weren't able to get all of it, and the stuff that we didn't water, it's gone. It's crisp, it dried up, it turned purple. It's very stressful. The deer aren't eating those plants. They're really stunted, and it was all due to lack of water. So we took a gamble. I would go up there and start. I think we started about 10 days before season opened here, October 1st. So we went up there about 10 days before season. I made the decision, I might bump a bunch of deer out of here, but at least I'm going to have brassica all October long, and including going into November. But I had to save this food plot because this brassica on this particular parcel is the #1 draw right now. From now until Thanksgiving, brassica it's easy to see because we got to watch this last year that Nebraska is the #1 draw. So we went up there, we made the decision, we're going to start watering. Anyway, we'd go up there about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. We would start the generator, we would start the sprinklers, and we would try to get out of there by 3:30 in the afternoon and give the plot 2 or 3 hours to settle down. I was really worried about running off. We had 2 or 3 really nice bucks we wanted to go after, and I was worried about it was going to wreck that plot for about a month. And quite honestly, we were having daylight pictures of these deer, and it just pushed them back an hour. So they knew something was going on, but I was very careful with, rubber boots and everything. But there was days where the wind, there's nothing I could do about it, was blowing into the bedding area. They knew I was there. But it didn't seem to bother them. So we pulled everything out on, I believe, Saturday morning, generator, all the sprinklers, everything, and then just try to let it settle down. Tuesday, deer season opened up, and we were actually able to harvest one of the 3-year-old deer on that property. So I didn't think the damage is as bad as I feared it was going to be. So then now let's talk about behind our house here. Same thing. Brassicas were just wilting. They were stunted. We were just battling the drought, and the screen is holding on. The clover chicory blend was doing okay, but we needed the water, and we needed water bad. So what we ended up doing was taking the same pump setup, garden hoses, and one of those sprinklers, and we ended up running I think about 100 to 150 feet of garden hose and started moving a sprinkler on our food plot behind the house. And I'm going to take you right now and show you.
So this is the pump that we use. We got this at Menards. It's a Barracuda 1-horse sprinkler pump. Barracuda is just a brand name. I'm assuming there's different brand names at different stores. It's probably all made by the same place. But we use a 1-inch inlet, and then the outlet we neck down to just a garden hose. These are the sprinklers that I like. I got these at Menards, but I've seen them at Tractor Supply. One of the things I'll do, I take this filter out. Make sure you have a filtration system on the inlet. But I take these out because any little bit of trash will get caught up here and it collects here. But you see with the filter out, let's see, where is it? Here it is. You can see the outlet. Fingers work. This is the outlet, and every once in a while I'll take a number 10 socket on a 1/4-inch drive ratchet and I'll pull that out, and there's a little bit of a plastic mesh back there that you have to clean out. But for the most part, I took this out. It helps with the flow, and if you can have a clean inlet where your suction is with a filter, you shouldn't really need this. But I'll show you the setup that we use right now. Okay, so what I have is about 100 feet of garden hose to this pump, and I'll go through this at the end of the video what this actually is, but it's just a shallow well sprinkler pump from Menards. And what I like is this clear hose. This is a 1-inch hose here, goes into a 3-gallon bucket. The sun's reflecting really bad here. So it goes into a 3-gallon bucket that's got about 200 holes drilled into it. That acts as a filter. I don't have a foot valve on it that keeps this hose primed, but I'll show you kind of a trick that I do to help that. But I like the clear hose to see if anything's going through the hose. So this is the process. What I'll do now, like I said, we've been watering for 2 days now. And what I'll do is I'll open this valve and it back feeds the pump. You can see water's leaking out, so I know this reservoir is filled right now. So I'm going to shut this off. And when I turn the pump on, I crack this valve. And what I do is I let it run for about 30 seconds just to make sure there's nothing, debris or anything that'll flow through there. So if it does, it immediately gets ejected right here. All right, turn the pump on. You can see the water coming. I'm going to crack this valve just a little bit. Let it build pressure. It's throwing water pretty good. So what I'll do now is I'll let it run for 10-20 seconds just to make sure the water is clear and clean coming through here. When we were trying to water on another property out of an old ditch, we were getting a lot of debris that plugged up the sprinklers. And there's a whole nother trick we'll go through on the sprinklers when we're done here. So all right, that's running. So what I'm going to do is start to slowly open this valve and start to close this valve. All right, that's fully open. That's closed. And again, these are just cheap water hoses from Menards. You can see the screen starting to yellow. We're gonna have to get some nitrogen in here. But it's doing really well. It's kind of dark green down here yet. Side-by-side test screen, somebody else's screen, another company's screen. It's as high as it's gonna get this year. It's gone to seed already, it's done growing. Ours is not even thrown one seed yet, it's still growing. But now you can see the sprinkler is running, and I'll let that run all day. Okay, I'll show you now what we do when we shut it down for the end of the day. We still have these dual switches. This one's open. So shut the pump off and I automatically close this. That way the water's trapped in here. And it's gonna slowly leak back through there, but the water in this hose is trapped. The sprinkler's 6 feet higher than the hose right now, maybe 5 feet higher. And when I open this in the morning, this water fills this up. So it's a great way to easily prime the pump. All right, we're at a different property. I'm just looking at, we were talking before about a friend of mine that had a lawn to put in. And this is what he has, a North Star 2-inch high pressure water pump. You can see it looks like a 2-inch inlet, goes out into his pond. And this is the manifold he created right here. It's actually got 3 water nozzles on it, and all 3 kept up with these lawn sprinklers quite well. Just got done doing some watering. But this is another option if you've got a bigger water source. And I believe this came from General Tool down in Fox Valley area, south of Green Bay, Wisconsin. But again, it's a North Star 2-inch high pressure water pump, and you're just gonna have to do some adapting. But I've watched it work, and it works outstanding. So you wouldn't need a generator, and you could run 3 to 5 sprinklers off of this, but you need a big water source.
So that might not be the perfect setup, but I got it to work. It worked fine. You know, there's some other things we want to do. I think I need to put a filter between the pump and the sprinkler. I probably should put I think it's called a foot valve, but at the time when I was doing this, Menards was out. That keeps that suction line primed, but I do think you need a bigger suction line than the output. We started out with a garden hose on each side, and it just couldn't get the volume. But we're learning. But it ended up working, and it worked quite well. We got to put a lot of water on that plot. It's full of deer every night. It's nice and thick and lush and green. You know, we did have to take most of that brassica and convert it into fall forage just because the brassicas weren't going to amount to anything this year. And I was kind of bummed because we've had brassicas in that food plot for the last 10 years, and it's so fun watching the deer walking that, you know, belly high brassica, and just, you know, and this time of year and eating that brassica, you see the, you know, the chewing on the big leaves and stuff. And I was kind of disappointed about that, but I knew we had to save that food plot, and cereal grains was our choice. And now we're going to talk about the method of planting. All right, so let's talk about our methods right now for planting in this drought. For the most part, we're done. We've been done planting for weeks, okay? But we did have a couple of family friends wanted some food plots put in for rifle season. Rifle season is like 6 weeks from now. So I knew with a little bit of moisture, if we could get these seeds buried, we should have a green food plot by November. So let's talk about the method, all right? And I'm going to do a review on this down the road, just not going to do it now. But we sold some equipment, traded some equipment, and got our hands on one of those PH outdoor 5-foot drills. Why did I choose that? Because it fit my need perfect, okay? One of our grounds is a lease, it's landlocked, and I have to drive 3/4 of a mile through a neighbor's property, you know, in and amongst trees, logging road, and that's why I wanted to go with a narrower model. Okay, if I went with one of those, you know, Great Plains or something, the footprint is so wide that I'd be worried about bouncing it off of trees and stuff going out there. So that's why I chose that particular model. I wanted something a little bit heavier because we've got a lot of clay. You know, we did look at the Tar River. I know a few of our friends, partners have them and they really like it, but I was a little concerned with one of our, you know, some of our least ground food plots are real heavy clay. I mean, it's like concrete right now. And I just didn't think that Tar River could do the job that I needed it to do on this particular piece of ground. Now, all the other ground that we work on, I think it would have been just fine. But again, that footprint seemed to be a little bit wider than I was comfortable with driving out to this particular piece of ground. So we ended up going with this PH Outdoors 5-foot model. The green one, I think they used to be Genesis. But, you know, one of the things I will not do is all our food plots with it, because most of you folks watching this don't have a drill. And I want to stay relevant to what you guys and girls are doing. So we're still going to do a lot of our food plots with tillers, discs, you know, that kind of thing. You know, somebody's in the back is raising their hand saying, well, why don't you just go no-till? Well, the one food plot, I'm looking out our window right now, and probably 250 yards through that window is the only food plot, the ground that we have to do no-till because it is so rocky. But I didn't even dream about planting this year because, again, the rain shut off here. Consistent rain was shut off here at the end of July. That ground is like concrete, okay? One rain is not going to fix that problem. So I didn't even bother wasting seed and doing no-till this year. There's no way I could have got anything to grow across the street doing no-till because it is so rocky and that ground is so hard. I didn't even bother doing food plots across the street this year. So we didn't even hunt across the street this year. Usually the kids hunt youth season, or that's one of the properties they hunt. We don't have any food plots planted because there's no rain and I didn't even want to waste the seed. So everyone's saying that I should go to no-till. It would have been a complete waste of time. Okay, so let's talk about what we did. Now, we're going to do a video next week on last-minute food plots, concentrating on these properties, okay? But the fact that we used our drill, there's other methods that we could have done to get the seed buried. But what did we end up doing? So we ended up spraying both properties, just Roundup. I think we had a little bit of Liberty left, and we did it on one property. I just wanted to see how that worked, but we didn't use a whole lot. We just had a little bit in a jug. So we did Roundup on most of them, on both properties. We mowed, and then we went in and drilled. Now what I ended up doing was messing with the depth and finally settled on 2 inches because I wanted that seed to be right about an inch. And because I don't think either one of these food plots have been tilled in a long, long time, we couldn't get that 1 inch. It seemed to sit up on the ground a little bit higher than I wanted it to be. And I would dig down. There is a little bit of moisture in the ground yet because one property butts up to a swamp on this food plot. The other one is in a real shaded area. So what we ended up doing was drilling at 2 inches, and the seed actual depth was about an inch, which is perfect. It's in the moisture zone. I plan on going up there and checking. I'm expecting to see the rye germinating. So that's what we ended up doing. The seed choice was rye, very heavy rye, a little bit of buckwheat, and a little bit of oats. Now we had a frost here. Now it was 80 degrees when I was planting, and we had the 10-day forecast didn't show frost, but we had a frost here the other day, and I think it might have been a killing frost. So if that buckwheat germinated, it's probably dead. But I had some laying around because we had a couple of broken bags. I think it was fall forage sandy soil. We ended up using that. But the method was this: get that seed buried, and I've talked about it for so long. Size of the seed, depth of the seed, especially in this drought. You can even go deeper because we want it down in that moisture zone. Okay, so we're going to talk about how we ended up drilling. Now, this is going to be the next week's video, last minute food plots, but we talked about why we drilled it, what we ended up doing, very little soil disturbance, and we also walk you through step by step, if we didn't have a drill, what we would have done, when we would have done it, and what we would have chosen for seed choices. So we'll talk about that, but that's how we ended up doing, planting these last minute food plots for these two property owners for rifle season, which is 5-6 weeks away. So I think we're going to have plenty of time to have rye to grow. But the biggest thing is that you get that seed buried and get it buried deep. All right, the last thing we want to talk about is success. I don't think I've shot a deer archery hunting since 2018. And we finally got on the board. Opening day here in Michigan was October 1st. You know, I was gonna have this great video. I've never filmed hunts. I've taken the camera along the phone. You know, it just wasn't my thing. You know, I'm there to harvest deer, and to me, bringing all this heavy camera equipment and stuff along. I'm not a YouTube channel, folks. We're a seed company with a YouTube channel. I thought it'd be great to bring the camera along because we were sitting in a box blind. It was going to be an observation hunt. And in fact, we've talked about this for a couple of years. 2 years ago, we built our first prototype. We call it the 906 blind. And we just built our second prototype. But the first one had the tall archery windows in it. And this one was located in a pinch point that overlooked a huge, huge food plot system. And we had bedding to the south. And honestly, the kids didn't have football or volleyball or basketball or any sports. And we had a perfect northwest wind. We had a 10 degree drop in temperature. It was perfect. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to just take the camera along and I'm going to sit in this observation because honestly, that's my favorite sit of the year. My first sit of the year on a big food plot, just getting to observe what we created and how the deer are moving. Is it what I'm going to predict it is? This is where I think they should come out. This is the bedding areas. I figure the bucks are come out down here. This is what we wanted. I didn't expect to have an opportunity to shoot a deer, but it happened. And unfortunately, I got to shoot a couple of deer right off the bat. Then that little red light comes on, the battery's dead. And it was really unfortunate because on the far end of the food plot where I figured all the bucks are going to be coming out, and that's where the trail camera showed they were coming out. And by design, that's where we wanted them because we have some great stands on the north end of the property where all the bedding is. And I wasn't going in there this early into the season, but I wanted to watch and observe. Somehow, one of the target deer on this property came out on the far end, fed their way down the long food plot corridor, got into the brassicas, and somehow ended up in front of us at 19 yards. I didn't realize it, but there was a scrape at this pinch point, and they headed right for that scrape, and it was an easy shot. Watched the deer fall, and couldn't believe opening day. I don't think I've ever done that before. Opening day, we had one of the target bucks on the ground. We had it on the ground, and it was I was real excited, don't get me wrong, but I'm like, the first time I was going to try to film one of these and the battery was dead. So we've got a couple of still pictures we'll show you. Deer was 3.5 years old. We've got the sheds from last year, so he had been there. I just didn't have a lot of pictures of him in the summer and in the early fall, but it was one of the target bucks on this property, and I was super fortunate to grab that. And that's it. So thank you so much for watching. Hopefully these drought ideas, it's so late in the season in the northern third of the country. We're just trying to keep these food plots alive and growing and green. The middle part is definitely down south. In these drought areas, the biggest thing is, folks, you got to get that seed covered. I'm talking people out of doing these overseeds. Unless you have rain, you can seed, and then you get rain again, because if that ground's like concrete, that thing will throw a root, whether it's rye, oats, or wheat or whatever, it might throw a root. But man, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. So think about, if you're still trying to plant food plots right now, think about getting that seed into the ground to combat this drought. Any way you can come up with watering, man, that might be the ticket to save your rifle season. You can still get those plots saved before the rut starts. Do what you got to do, folks, because honestly here, the 10-day forecast, we might have a chance of rain. Today is Thursday that I'm doing this video. We might have a chance of rain for Saturday and Sunday, but you know what? I've heard that song and dance for the last 2 months, and it just has 9 times out of 10 the storm's gone past us north or south. So not counting on rain anymore this year. So got to do what I got to do to keep our food plots alive. So thank you so much for watching, folks. Hopefully this helps. And then next week we're going to talk about last minute food plots.